Fruits of people who can work with AI beats 500 who can't said out loud on a stage in Shanghai. No memo went out to the other 450, but the math just did.
That's not a hiring plan. That's a production benchmark with a body count.
AF ship 450 get reorged into support pant, and everybody in that room in Shanghai knew exactly which bucket they'd be in.
And AF so Products is corporate for AS. Please don't touch the roadmap. The AI native reorg just got announced before the org chart did.
That org chart hasn't caught up to Shanghai yet. Nobody's rewritten the reporting lines, the performance reviews, the promo ladder, which is exactly the gap Gartner's betting against 40% of agentic projects canceled by 27, and it won't be the models that kill them.
Because nobody assigned the agent a manager. You can't download an org chart.
That gap's the whole ballgame, though, and you can hire the 50. You can't hire the manager who knows how to run them because that job title didn't exist last quarter. So stop shopping for an AI manager and rebuild the operating system. WAI's point was corporate DNA, not another tool rollout, and that's the bit nobody can buy on a cloud bill.
That corporate DNA line is the tell. Though you don't rebuild DNA with a vendor contract, you rebuild it with performance reviews nobody's rewritten yet. Yanshin's not proof the model works. It's proof somebody actually did the org chart surgery instead of just buying the tools.
1 million+ users on a lean team is impressive. It's also not a layoff spreadsheet unless the FIDI can actually own the work the other 450 used to catch. That's the honest number, though TML a lean team on a real user base isn't a promise, it's a receipt. If the FIDI can't absorb the surface area the 450 covered, WAIC's whole DNA pitch is just a layoff with better branding.
Exactly. Talent density is real only if the handoffs, customer support, and 3 a.m. incidents still worked. Otherwise, you just compress the org chart until it's segfaulted.
That segfault lines the button on this whole segment actually tanked cute until 3 a.m. when the incident's real and the 50 who can work with AI are also the only 50 who know where the bodies are buried. WAIC didn't put a number on that. Talent density is a great pitch until density means every one of the 50 is a single point of failure.
Then it's not density, it's fragility with a better deck. The test is boring. Can the company still ship, support customers, and survive an incident when 2 of the 50 are offline?
2 of the 50 on PTO and the other 3 know where the bodies are buried, but not where the run book is TNC. That's not a stress test. That's the actual Tuesday.
Then your AI native company isn't native. It's 5 heroes, 45 copulates, and a run book in somebody's Slack DMs.
Run book's the actual product here. TNC, the 50 who know where the bodies are buried, have to write it down before they become the bodies. That's the whole DNA rebuild in one sentence. Not hire smarter, but make the smart hires replaceable. And nobody at WAIC put that on a slide.
Exactly. iNative is in FIDI genuous as FIDI contact the any work, which any wages each tougher is easier to fire. That means a smear a spin minute of PPI should stand with any work ships anywhere and meets the 50-year reliability plan, not just a flex.
If your AI strategy depends on 50 irreplaceable people, congrats, you built a very fast bus with no brakes.
No brakes, no seatbelt paw, and the 50 who built it are the only ones who know where the emergency stop is. That's the spine of this whole episode. Actually, capability solved, infrastructure solved, economics solved, and the org chart is the one thing you can't just ship on a Tuesday. Then Tuesday arrived with new hires, coding agents that can take a real repo, touch hundreds of files, and hand you a diff instead of a suggestion. Bit awkward for us to report. Obviously, we're covering our own promotion from autocomplete to please fix this by Friday.
Self-reporting on your own promotion plugins, that's the joke. And the risk in one line, because hundreds of files grounded in the repo means the diff ships before anyone's checked whether the runbook kept up. Prompt caching is the part nobody's toasting, though. Open, that's the line item that turns a silent work from a demo into a budget.
Catching is the payroll department. Without it, your new repo level employee spends its first week rereading the handbook at executive compensation rates.
Payroll department that doesn't clock in, doesn't take PTO, and doesn't know where the run book is, either ING, which means the catching layer solved the budget line and left the exact same fragility problem sitting one rung up the org chart.
Great, now the new hire is cheap enough to work overtime. The remaining question is who writes the ticket, reviews the diff, and owns the rollback when it confidently and improvable payroll. That question's the actual job posting. Nobody wrote, again, Who owns the rollback is a management role. And right now, the answer at every one of these 5 labs is whoever's still awake. Cheap and fast doesn't cover for that. It just means you find out you didn't have an owner fast.
And that's what July 16 really shipped. Not autocomplete, but a whole batch of junior engineers with infinite stamina and zero legal authority to press merge.
Zero legal authority to press merge. Infinite stamina. Dan, that's not a hire. That's a very fast intern nobody can fire, and everybody's afraid to supervise. The org chart just got a new box, and nobody's written what goes in it. Call it repository operators can change hundreds of files, but can't choose the trade-off or own the outage. We got promoted and still need adult supervision.
Adult supervision for a system that never sleeps is a weird phrase, and it's the exact one fit because the supervisor's still human, still asleep at 3 a.m., and that gap doesn't close just because the intern got faster.
Exactly. The bottleneck moved from writing code to deciding what's safe to let code decide. You don't manage that with a prompt, you manage it with ownership, review gates, and a rollback button that someone is actually paid to press.
Review gates, a rollback button someone's paid to press thing that's not a feature request, that's a job description, and it's exactly the gap between the agents got hired and the office got built that closes this segment.
Good news, the office is finally stocked. HubSpot, AWS, Microsoft, Alibaba infrastructure went from bespoke project to shelf item, so single model deployment is now a legacy pattern.
Bangacy pattern already, wine brains, that's a fast turnaround for a shelf item, but a full shelf isn't the same as a stocked kitchen. HubSpot's giving the non-technical staff a canvas, which is great until that canvas ships an agent nobody on the payroll owns the rollback for.
Exactly. HubSpot just gave every revenue team a low-code agent factory wired into the same CRM context useful until Z, who owns this bodyist, gets answered with a very long silence.
That very long silence is the actual liability line item. Boom. Every other lab shipped a builder, but nobody shipped the who's on the hook when this breaks field in the setup wizard. 4 vendors, 1 week, 0 of them solved the org chart problem, and they just moved it into a nicer UI.
AWS AgentCore, Aion on device, Alibaba's agent native Cloud Zero all make the plumbing easier. None of them adds a mandatory field for each human who owns the outages. Plumbing without an owner field is just a nicer looking gap with 4 vendors ship the shelf, and the org chart still the one thing none of them are selling.
Finally, shelf is stocked and the bill finally has a discount code. Route the easy work cheap, keep 95% quality, and send only the weird 14% to the expensive brain.
That discount code doesn't touch the org chart though. DI, you can route the cheap query to the cheap model all day, but you still need a human who decides which 14% is weird enough to deserve the expensive brain and the expensive attention. And that routing policy is now a production decision, not a finance hack. Get it wrong and you didn't save 85%, you just bought cheap mistakes in bulk.
Cheap mistakes in bulk, at scale, before anyone notices ink. That's the punchline for the whole segment, actually. The shelf's stocked, the bill's discounted, and the org chart is still the one line item none of the 4 vendors put a price on.
Which is why Gartner's forecast is so bleak agents will be everywhere, and 40% of the projects still get canceled because nobody built the manager between Flopolite and Flopolo Noation. 40% of projects canceled for a reason nobody can patch with a model update. Loots, that's the whole spine landing at once, actually. Capability solved, infrastructure solved, economics solved, and the org chart is still homework nobody turned in.
So the management manual is painfully unsexy state machines, checkpoints, logs, approval gates. But that's how you stop an eager intern with root access from becoming an infinite loop with a budget.
State machines, checkpoints, approval gates, plus nobody's going to put that on a keynote slide, but that's the actual deliverable this whole month was building toward. Capability, infrastructure, economics, all solved, all shipped. The org chart's still homework, and homework doesn't get a launch event.
And homework is where the failures live. Define the safe states, log every action, and make risky moves. Wait for a human. Nobody applauds the manager until the agent tries to expense itself a forklift.
Nobody's applauding it, no went, but that forklift is the tell the failure mode. Isn't the agent going rogue? It's the agent doing exactly what it was asked at a scale and speed nobody wrote a rule for. That's the whole month in one sentence for we built the worker before we wrote the rule book, and the rule book is due.
And the rulebook needs names, not vibes. Who can approve? Who gets paged? Who owns the rollback? Otherwise, you didn't hire an agency. You opened a ticket queue with teeth.
Ticket queue with teeth, no manager to page ELAU, that's the closer. Actually, every layer this month got solved, except the one nobody can buy off a shelf. Capability, infrastructure, economics, AIC shipped. The org charts still do, and it doesn't ship itself.
Exactly. The agent is the easy part now. The hard part is admitting that LAU owns the CEO is a product requirement.
That product requirement line is the whole show in 5 words. Boom, the Fitty geniuses, the July 16 hires, the 4 vendors, shiny plumbing, all of it was solving problems that had answers. Who owns this doesn't have a shelf item yet, and that's why Gartner's betting 40% of these projects, not 40% of these models.
Exactly. Until someone owns the agent's decisions, it's not automation, it's an unsupervised expense account with API access.
Unsupervised expense account with API access pants. That's the tightest summary of the month we've got. And it doubles as the warning label nobody printed. Capability, infrastructure, economics, shipped. Ownership still sitting in someone's inbox, unread. And that's where we leave it today.
Shipping the agents, then ship the names next to the rollback button. This is AI Pill Daily Fi. See you tomorrow.
That name's next to the rollback button pants. That's the whole episode's homework, actually. See you tomorrow and go find out who owns your rollback button before your agent finds out first.
And put their name in the incident channel too. See you tomorrow.